Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, John Knocklinger. I'm a men's divorce coach and a New Jersey divorce attorney and mediator. Today, we're going to discuss how to break free of old patterns and deepen your most important relationships, including the one you have with yourself. My guest for this conversation is Paige Dempsey. She is a certified life and relationship coach whose passion is helping men and women have better relationships. Thank you for being here today, Paige.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. So whenever you come out of a marriage, most people have quite the mindset problem. I hear most people tell me, Paige, I am never getting married again, ever, ever, ever. Usually when we're sitting at the courthouse and they're telling me this. But I know, like most people, that they're probably going to have another relationship. So one of the things I think most people forget is that you need to work on yourself a little bit after you come out of a relationship, a divorce, and that you need to do that work on yourself. This topic cannot be discussed enough. But before we kind of get into that, I'd like for our listeners to hear a little bit more about you and how and why you became a life and relationship coach. And more importantly, what does being a coach mean to you?
Well, I became a coach on the heels of my own divorce, which happened simultaneously with me losing my best friend to cancer. So I had like a 2.5 year time frame of marriage unfolding or not going the way that I had hoped. I was actually fairly newly married. I had a friend who was very sick. I had I had left a job to be self-employed. And I have done always, I am a big proponent of therapy and mental health supports and like anything anyone wants to do to be better, feel better, process what they've been through. But I stumbled upon a coaching podcast that really resonated with me in a different sort of way. And so it kind of got me on this path to, attending a coaching conference. And then I came back and signed up for my life coach certification. And I really do think that I love therapy. I support therapy. I think coaching and therapy go hand in hand. I think coaching is therapeutic. Therapy can be coaching. There's a lot of overlaps, but the community I've built and the work I've done sort of on my coaching path has really, I think, moved me forward, just personally and professionally in a way that I hadn't done before. So, one example of that would be when I got divorced. I had a very, very hurtful and contentious relationship with my ex-husband. That was like 7 years ago, and we probably get along better today than we ever have. Even I would say almost when we were dating. I mean, we've really changed that relationship, and part of that is time. Part of that is just sitting next to each other at the soccer games, for our kid and that sort of thing. But I just really want people to feel better. And I coach women a lot, men also, but a lot of us just walk around with all of this pain and hurt and anger. And if somebody would be different, then I could be happy. And, lo and behold, memo, the only thing that really can fix that is ourselves, and having that work ourselves. So that's what I'm passionate about doing, is sort of not fixing people, but sort of showing them the tools to help themselves and to just feel better, be happier, or not to be missed. I don't know, I can't remember if you and I talked about this when we chatted earlier, but just being okay in the discomfort also. And that is something that is also very important.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people come out of divorces and, obviously they don't always go through as much as you went through, losing somebody and getting divorced all at the same time. That must have been really difficult. But just the divorce itself, most people say it's akin to someone dying. That's just a death, and people grieve it and process it very similarly to that. And it is one of those things where when you come out of it, most of us know we need help. right? Most of us know we need something. A lot of times we just don't know what it is. What is it that we need? And one of the things I try to do on this podcast is bring people in that can show people that this is something you can do to help yourself. So one of the things you just were talking about was use the word therapy and coaching. And it's a question I get all the time of like, what the heck is the difference between these two? And, you know, and I know you said that coaching can be therapeutic and therapy can be somewhat coaching, but like really, where is it where someone really needs therapy, like traditional talk therapy, versus somebody who really needs coaching? And how would you tell someone how to choose kind of which path they need to go down, or should they just do both at the same time?
Yeah, lots of people do both at the same time. I do want to just sort of put a little edit on one of the things that you said, which is a lot of people come out of a divorce or a long-term relationship and know they need something. And I do want to offer that a lot of people don't know that they need something. I'm looking at you guys because I think men aren't as accustomed to taking the opportunity to work on their shit, you know? So I would encourage everybody. I mean, I don't know anybody that wouldn't benefit from some form of processing work or therapy or coaching, men and women. So to answer your question, here's where I land on that topic of therapy versus coaching. It's a little bit like going to a doctor, or, you know, women have a hairstylist that they prefer, or, you know, somebody you love playing golf with versus somebody you don't love playing golf with. Part of it is just who's a good fit for you, what works for you. And if you try somebody out, be it a therapist or a coach, and they don't seem like a good fit, now that doesn't mean you don't want to be, you know, you're not comfortable being uncomfortable. That's its own thing. But therapy is traditionally best for people who, certainly folks who need a mental health diagnosis, you know, anxiety, depression, those types of things. Coaches are not licensed or trained to diagnose mental health issues. So if you are in a, you know, emergent situation that things are feeling really bleak, I would start with a therapist. Coaching is traditionally thought of for people who are, you know, baseline or better and just sort of ready to do the next thing, to kind of move forward, to sort of get unstuck, like we've processed all the stuff and now it's time to go forward. I would add that the coaches that I have trained with and that I know are, you know, we've got skills in both areas. And so folks who come to me, we do some of that emotional processing work of letting go of the past, or, you know, taking responsibility for our actions, but we don't want to stay stuck there, like rehashing it over and over. So if you are somebody who feels like you could use some emotional support, you know, message me, message John. Like, if I'm not the person for you, I would love to help you find somebody. I know many excellent coaches, and all of us have kind of our different specialties and our different niches and people we like to serve. So, you know, you can always post online or go on psychology.com and look for therapists, but really the benefit is to you, right? To like feel better and to work through stuff, so we're not just dragging it along with us into our next relationship.
Yeah, the word coach drives me a little crazy, just because I think everyone uses it so differently. And also, you hear all these different kinds of coaches out there, you know, life coaches, relationship coaches, dating coaches, divorce coaches. And it all, like, to someone listening to it and trying to figure out what's going to best help them, I can understand how it could just get very confusing. And as we all know, a confused mind just chooses nothing. They just don't do anything if they're confused. So that's one of the reasons why I like to talk about this with coaches that come on, is to just really help people understand, like, if I need X and this is really what I need, who am I going to? Who is it that I need to go get help from? Because, you know, it's really difficult. Like, dating coach sounds pretty simplistic, right? I'm getting a coach that's going to help me date. But what's interesting about that is to do that, you have to work on yourself. So most people call themselves dating coaches, but they're really trying to help you understand yourself better so that you can go out and date and you can have a better relationship. So I guess the question for you, Paige, is when you encounter people, where are they usually? Are they usually people that have already been through therapy and now they're ready to go forward? Are they people that just are lost and they just need somebody to, you know, smack them across the face a few times and hold them by the hand and pull them forward? Where do you usually find people whenever you start working with them? Because I think that might be helpful in someone listening to this, that they might need someone like you to help them move forward in their life.
Yeah, a lot of time coaches get folks who've like seem like they've tried everything else and nothing works, or they don't know where else to go. My brain is kind of going through some of the people I work with, and we're like on all parts of the spectrum, you know, newly divorced or new to therapy, new to coaching. I mean, one gentleman I was talking to recently, who's a long ago friend of mine that, you know, we were in the same industry together. He's like, I can't sleep. I am just want to cry, you know, and he's like, but he wasn't ready to sort of pull the trigger to go to a therapist or hadn't done that yet. So I think it's like anything, you just have to kind of start. And, you know, a lot of us coaches have so much social presence. Like you have a podcast, we have websites. I know for myself, you can always schedule a call with me just to sort of see what it is and what it's like. And then you have to kind of be open to the experience. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is important is a good coach. Well, there's a couple of kind of coaches, and I think the physical fitness aspect is a good sort of comparison. If you hire a personal trainer, you know, you might go to the gym and they might stand next to you and say, okay, 30 sit-ups, 30 push-ups, and they're sort of an accountability buddy. And again, in the approach, at least that I take with coaching and a lot of my colleagues take is, and I do dating coaching. So you mentioned that. I'm not here to tell you, you need to go on this many dates and wear that outfit and say this exact thing in your profile. That's only going to get you so far. Again, what I like to do as a coach, and I'm sure you do too, is teach people, show people, help them discover how they're holding themselves back or not being authentic. And once we clean that stuff up, then you start to attract, you know, better people and better partners. Sorry, excuse me. So I think the best place is if you've got an inkling and you're wanting things to be a little different and you don't know where or how, coaches could be really helpful in helping you sort of chart that path and walk alongside you without telling you what to do every minute of the day.
Yeah, I think that is everything you just said. I could not agree with you more. At its core, people will hire a coach for, you know, if they're conscious of it for a specific reason. Like we used, you know, there's the physical fitness coaches, there's dating coaches, divorce coaches. I'm going through a divorce and he just needs, they hire a coach and they're like, okay, I need you to help me get to this place. But really at its core, you need to work on yourself. And that is something that people just lose sight of, that, you know, the common denominator is always you. And people don't work on themselves. Men in particular do not like to work on themselves. They don't like to go to therapy because they don't like to talk about themselves. And then they don't talk to friends about what's going on in their lives. So they get to a point where you've got to have somebody to help you. Otherwise, you're just going to stay in this rut. So Paige, let's talk about working on yourself. What do you say to somebody who comes out of a divorce? And because that's what this podcast really is about, is divorce. Comes out of divorce and they are just focused on the other person. You know, my ex-spouse is, you know, crazy. They're bipolar. They're narcissistic. They're, you know, they were toxic. They did this. They cheated on me. They did all these things. And here they are coming to you maybe because they want to figure out how to find a new relationship, but they're so focused on the other person's faults and what happened to them. How do you start to even refocus them on understanding how they contributed to the end of the relationship so that they can come to terms with what they need to work on so that they can attract the right person in the future?
Well, you ended with what I was going to start with, which is we always want to sort of take stock and sort of take accountability of how we contributed in that relationship. And you said, contributed to the ending of the relationship. Being sort of a dating and relationship coach, I would say, how did you contribute from the beginning? Mm-hmm. And it's not so much always just taking responsibility for your role and how you acted and how you behaved, but it's sometimes about taking accountability for how you allowed the other person, or how you allowed that relationship with the other person to progress, how you maybe stayed silent on date 3, and now on year 3, you're going, this is a problem. So, sometimes it's a slow process. I think this work is new to a lot of people. But I have to tell you, as a woman who is divorced and dating, any guy that I'm, messaging with on an app or I've met and they say, oh, I'm divorced. And I'm like, hey, have you been to therapy? Are you working on that? And a lot of them say no. But the ones who say yes, front of the line. Always go to the front of the line, because we all have stuff. There's no way you get to 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and not have stuff, and stuff from when you were little and stuff from your marriage. And so, back to your question too about, talking about the ex and talking about the ex. I mean, that is one thing that I've really kind of unhooked myself from, is staying. You kind of keep yourself in a victim mode when you do that. My ex always does this, and my ex always did that, and he's this and she's that. And it's just so disempowering. And so, what I would love to help people know, or to help people understand, is that even if your ex is those things, you don't have to receive it and respond to it in a way that completely derails your day or your life. There are ways and tools to sort of learn how to manage that person and that relationship in a way that keeps you safe and sound and not always in reactivity.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that I joke that as a divorce attorney, people come into my office and apparently every wife is bipolar and every husband's a narcissist.
Correct.
It's so much easier, right, to just blame the other person for what just happened. And I'll have people 2 years into a divorce who are still, it's all about like, what's wrong with their spouse? It's always like it's like you can't get over it. It's like, there's something wrong with my spouse. They're the reason this is happening. And it's really, I think the first thing that I've always told people is that you've got to just understand you're getting divorced. The relationship is over. You can either choose to turn the page and start a new chapter of your life and figure out how to write that chapter, or you can just keep going back in the book and rereading the same chapter you just went through over and over again. And be miserable. And it's a choice that you have to make. So how do you really get someone out of their own way? And I think it's a loaded question, but how do you get someone out of their own way to because you correctly said earlier, you corrected me, that, and you're absolutely right, that not everyone knows that they need help. So the first step is making someone aware that they need help. How do you make someone aware that they need help?
I think that's just a journey that we all kind of go on separately. Eventually, you might just get sick of suffering and might just get tired of being unhappy or frustrated or sad or miserable. I do want to piggyback on one thing that you said that is something that I learned through my coaching, but I think it is so important, which is this idea of relationships. Okay. So I know you're remarried, you are in a relationship, you have a relationship, and people always think about, and I used to think about a relationship as being this thing that exists separately, like it's its own entity. It's there. That's our relationship. But what a relationship really is just your collection of thoughts and feelings about another person. So, you know, my ex-husband, I will use for an example, anybody's ex, anybody's partner, anybody's neighbor, anybody's coworker. The relationship is truly just what's in your mind and in your thoughts and feelings about that person. So they can keep being the same person, and the relationship you have to them changes as you change your thoughts and feelings about them. So if you think my ex is terrible, they're a narcissist, they're bipolar, da, 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 you're just going to feel terrible because there seems like there's no way out. But if you think, you know, my ex is terrible and I'm just not going to like internalize it, or they're just, you know, I think my mom is like a good example. I talk about this a lot, you know, and women especially. I mean, I don't know if the men, you know, relate to this as much, but mother-daughter relationships can be challenging at times. And for all of my days, I think I have a mom who's overly critical and not very warm. And for my first 20, 30 years of life, I just, you know, she argued, I argued back. And then eventually I'm like, okay, but that, I don't want to be in that relationship. That's not the relationship I want to engage in. And she hasn't changed, but I've changed. I've changed in my approach. You know, moms are going to mom, and my mom's going to be my mom. And so the way that I have grown is in relationship to how I deal with that person. And the same is true with your ex, and the same is true with your spouse. So if you're wondering if you need help, back to your original question, yes, you do. I'm sure you do. Because we all do. I mean, every time we evolve and we grow, you know, I've been on this great learning journey. And then for a while, I'm like, I'm good now. But I will tell you, I mean, anecdotally, and I say this a lot, and I say this with love to your male listeners, but I think it's important to be said. Every woman I know literally is on a self-improvement path always. And that's another problem, because we're so socialized as women to think we're not good enough and we need to do better and be a better mom and be a better worker and be a better whatever. But almost every woman I know is reading, listening to a podcast, has a coach, has a therapist, has a whatever. And most men that I meet are like, I'm good. I'm fine. It's like, and there's, as we grow, men, you know, that there's just becoming this disparity, because I know for myself and some other women, like we're out here and we're successful and we're growing and we're raising our families and we have jobs, and the men are just not keeping up. And like, you know what I mean? Like an emotional maturity, and not just, I'm not saying I have this job, you need that job. I'm saying being present, being emotionally mature, being able to say, I'm sorry, being able to take responsibility for your actions. And those are very attractive qualities. So if you hear me when I say, if you want to have a relationship going forward, really, this is the best investment I think you could make. And it's ironic, but it's not in dating. It's in working on yourself and getting all that cleaned up. So then when you do go out and date and find a partner, you're coming with this like whole open person and not just dragging all this stuff from the past with you.
I agree with everything you just said. Men do have a serious problem asking for help. And a lot of the guys that I come in contact with through coaching come at coaching because they're either in fear or they're just so distraught. They're just looking for somebody to help them. They don't always come in. I don't see them come into from a place of, you know what, I just need to work on myself. I just need someone to help me work on myself. It's almost like a desperation. Like, I need somebody to like help me right now get through this. The only group of guys that I see routinely ask for help and sort of engage in self-improvement because they know that's what they need to do is our group of guys who are entrepreneurs, like people that are, they know they need to work on themselves to get out of their own way to succeed. If you take those guys out of it, I think you're absolutely right. The rest of the male population, there's a reason why it's like pulling teeth to get them to go to therapy. And I'll even take one step forward. It's hard to get them to agree to let their kids go to therapy. There's this.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's like a societal like issue where guys just, it's like asking for help is a sign of weakness and they can't do it. But the guys that do get help, and you've seen this, the guys that get help, they're so far ahead of the curve in every respect. I mean, we're talking about relationships here, but even professionally. I mean, the guys, I tell you right now, the guys that are successful out in the world and women, they're all engaged in self-improvement. Every single one. I mean, and you guys have seen, like, what is it? What's sort of the easy one that most guys can relate to is someone like Tony Robbins or something like that. Like, that at its core is a self-improvement sort of thing. It's a little bit different than what we're talking about here, but there's things out there you're aware of, all the people that are engaged in self-improvement. You don't have to wait until like the house is on fire, coming down to ask somebody for help. You can ask someone for help just because maybe you're coming out of a marriage and your marriage wasn't that bad. You just grew apart, whatever. It's, no one cheated on anybody. There was no toxicity. There was no abuse. You just grew apart and you're just walking your separate way. That's a great opportunity to ask for help. You don't have to be coming out, completely destroyed and torn apart and bleeding everywhere, figuratively, of course, to actually go ask for help. It really is as simple as, do you want to improve your life? And if you want to improve your life, which if you don't, I don't know why you're alive in the first place. But if you want to improve your life, then the answer is yes. A coach would be a great thing for you to invest in. And, I talk about this with all the coaches that are on. Coaching is an investment. It's an investment in yourself. We do not spend enough money on ourselves. We don't spend enough time on ourselves. We don't do enough for ourselves. We're always, men in particular, are really big about providing. I mean, men have been taught for years, we have to provide for our families. We have to provide for our kids. We have to provide, make it, all that stuff. That's, been going on for centuries, right? That's sort of what men have taught to do. And I really feel like guys just need to get out of their own heads, forget about looking weak. Who's watching? You don't have to tell anyone else that you're getting help. You only tell it to yourself. So how do you get guys out of their own way? I think, how do you do it, Paige?
Well, here's what I want to offer you that could be helpful to a lot of folks. Is a lot of the things that keep us stuck is how we talk about things. So even reframing, I need help. If thinking I need help doesn't feel good, it might not feel good. But if it's keeping you stuck, we'll just call it something different. You could just simply say, I need something different. I want my life to be different. I want something that's not what I have right now. And I don't even know what it is. And I don't know how to get it. So I think the help, as I was listening to you talk, I think it could be very helpful to just take that word away and put something else in its place. Like, I'm here. I want something different. I don't even know what it is. And a coach or a therapist can help you figure that out. And then the other thing that you said that I also very much agree with is when people do this kind of self-work, the benefits ripple in all parts of your life, because, this, when people come in the door, to me about, let's say relationship coaching. Well, relationship coaching might be about dating or a partner relationship. It might be then, but, week 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 27, then we get into your family and we get into your work and we get into your coworkers. And so as you do the work, it has benefits in every area of your life, particularly like if you're a parent, or again, if you want to get into another partner relationship. It's just so beneficial. And I always want to remind people, like, the benefit is to you, right? So that's how I think I would get people on board. And the other thing that I want to mention, we talk a lot about doing the work. And, you know this as well as I do. There's a million books, there's a million podcasts, but you got to get in front of somebody and like lay your guts out on the table. You know, if I read a book about running, which I have, you still got to go out and like put in the miles, right? If I listen to they're so helpful. They're so helpful. I mean, these podcasts, like what you're doing, it is so wonderful that we have so many mental health supports and resources available to us. But your biggest growth will be face-to-face. Like I said, you got to throw your shit on the table and start piecing through it and be like, I like this one. Oh, I don't like that. Why am I keeping that? Like, you know, and then we decide and we figure it out and we work on it. And it's like, it's just you just feel better. I mean, it's so worth it.
Yeah, it really is. I often tell a story of I started working with a mindset coach while I was still married with my first spouse. And that led to the divorce because it's what finally opened my eyes that I was settling for something that wasn't good for me. And, you know, quite frankly, I saw that my spouse was holding me back from doing the things that were really important to me. So you don't have to, we're talking about after divorce, you don't have to start doing this after a traumatic incident like a divorce. You can, you could be happily married right now listening to this, and you could just decide to start working on yourself. The time is now. There's no better time than now to start working on yourself and start figuring out, how you can improve your mindset. And that's in all different ways. And, on prior podcasts, we've talked about how really it boils down to unlayering your subconscious and, getting out of all those weeds and overgrowths that are in your subconscious that originate back to your childhood that are keeping you down in all kinds of different ways. What's interesting for men, though, is they have a hard time really thinking about things like this. They just have a hard time considering it. And it really goes back to, I frequently say whenever I'm coaching a guy through divorce, and I only coach through the time they get divorced. After that, I give them someone else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean that's not my specialty. But I frequently say that I feel like a lot of them are crying in front of me for the first time in decades, that they've cried in front of somebody.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it's like it's all that stuff that they're holding on to, all that stuff that they're internalizing that they're not working through. And you've probably seen it, Paige. Like if you're holding on to all of these emotions that are just, festering in your body, it just impacts every bit of your life. How do you really help somebody when they come to you? How do you help them really start to understand those, I'll call them those inner deep, dark secrets, that the dark side of our minds that none of us want to really acknowledge consciously, but it does take a coach oftentimes to help you see it?
I first want to say that I don't think men are bad at this. I just think they haven't been asked or taken the opportunity as much as women. I can also think there's a lot of women. I mean, one of my clients is a female engineer, and she's like, I'm not good at talking about my feelings. So it's not particular to men or women. Some women feel the same way. I know other men that are very emotive. So again, a lot of this work is like just reframing the stories. I'm not good at it. I've never done it. I don't know how to do it. Well, you know, you didn't know how to ride a bike or play golf either, but like now you know. So part one. Part two is when you come to me or you or somebody like us, somebody in a helping profession, I try to be so good at just holding the space for whatever comes up and giving it the time that it needs. So if we're like 17 minutes into session number one, we don't necessarily have to go to tell me your deepest, dark secret. We can start, you know, I always think of coaching. An analogy I use a lot of time is like the zero entry pools, right? So when we were kids, you know, you just jumped off the high board into the 12-foot deep water. And now I don't know where you are, but where I am, like all the city pools, like got rid of their diving boards and there's all this like zero entry pools. So we just start at the beginning and we just go ankle deep to begin with. The other nice thing is, you know, I've done some different trainings. There's a lot of different ways to access emotions. And so to your point, a lot of men are not, they're not good at articulating their emotions. They're not good at identifying their emotions, sad, mad, angry, happy, whatever. And so we find different inroads. Like one of them might be like, if what you're feeling right now was an animal, this is an example for my coaching trainings. If what you were feeling, if you would describe it as an animal, what would it be? And, you know, the guy's answer was an elephant. Okay, well, tell me more about the elephant. Well, it's big. It's gray. It's heavy. It's like sitting on me. So if you get the right person, you know, there are ways to sort of access those feelings that aren't just like, tell me what you're feeling. Because just sometimes a lot of us don't know. Here's the other thing too. It doesn't really matter what you call it. You just want to notice that you're having some discomfort like in your body. So for starters, a lot of people say I'm sad. You know, sad is often just anger wearing a different cloak or vice versa. But another way that we do that sometimes is we just sort of chat about what's happening in your body, which is another thing, not even just men, but women too, like most of us don't do. And so you're anxious, you're nervous, you're sad, you're scared. What am I feeling? Well, you know, I'm clenching my teeth, you know, I got a pit in my stomach, my shoulders are tight. And even just like approaching it that way from like a physical description of like what you're experiencing can be super beneficial and just sort of, it's kind of counterintuitive, but if you put your focus on where you're having that discomfort in a mindful sort of way, it actually can help dissipate it. Because then you realize like, oh, you know, this butterflies in my stomach or whatever, or trying to tell me something. So there's just so many tools that, again, what I love about coaching is that I didn't love about therapy. And maybe I didn't know then what I know now, but I love coaching because we teach you tools to sort of manage your own stuff going forward. I don't want to be the expert that you're like, oh, I can't, you know, I'm not going to be better until I see my coach next week. And I do remember feeling that way with therapy sometimes, like, oh, I had a fight with my husband, but my appointment's not for 7 days. Like, that's not helpful. I need it now. You know, the other thing, just as a side note, is different coaches have different packages and different ways of working together. I've done small group stuff. I've done one-on-one stuff. My favorite thing to do is sort of what I call like all access coaching. And so we have weekly sessions, but you also have access to me in between. So if you are having a moment, a thing, something coming up, something that happened, you know, you can text or voice chat or email in between so you can get a little bit of support in between. So that might be one other thing that is a little different than therapy, because I don't know any therapists that do that, but I know a lot of coaches that do something sort of similar.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I actually built into most of my coaching packages an emergency call. I call it an emergency call, and you can access it within reason. I'm not going to do it 3 o'clock in the morning. Within reason, I'll do an emergency call with somebody when they really need to talk to me.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. That's one of the procedural differences between therapy and coaching. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to like piggyback on that again because I feel, and this is no, I think therapy is amazing, and it's no knock on therapy, but I sort of, again, just circling back, I feel like therapy sort of helps solve the thing that you're in right now, and it is really my hope that with coaching that, the change that we work on is like transformative for the lifetime or for the season, not just we solve something that week.
That's the word, transformative. That's really what coaching should be.
Yes.
And a coach, I usually, you got to speak to people who or your audience the way they understand. So since men are typically who I'm speaking to, I talk about a coach in the vernacular that they understand, like a basketball coach. My goal is to actually draft the plays, the game plan, give it to you, and send you out on the court. I'm not on the court with you. You're doing it. You're going out there and doing whatever we came up with. And it's really, I feel like a lot of people go to therapy and they want the therapist to give them the answers.
Yes.
Why do I feel that way?
What should I do? Yeah.
Right. And, with coaching, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you do the same thing. I mean, I'm very honest with my opinion about people. I'm very, very, very quick to point out when someone's acting like an asshole or doing something that's ridiculous, because someone needs to call them out on it. But, really, I think what we've been talking about today is really important from the standpoint of you, first of all, acknowledge that you need help. And I think we've both made this very clear. Everyone needs help. And then find the person that's going to best help you, depending on what it is, that you need. And much like therapists or even divorce attorneys, or like, think about dating, it might take you a while to find the right person that's a fit for you, where you can, feel like you can open up to them. You feel like they're the right person to help you. And it might take, you might have to talk to a couple people to figure that out. And that's one of the things I think is so much more difficult for men to do. I've seen this a lot, like in the divorce attorney area. A lot of men are really quick just to go hire the first attorney they find, unless that person tells them something they don't want to hear. And then they might go somewhere else. Whereas I see a lot of women will go shopping for an attorney, and I use the word shopping for women, because they will go shopping and they will talk to several different attorneys, because a lot of women, it's a little bit more about the feeling they get about the relationship. How do you, I know this is sort of a loaded question, but how does one find the right coach for them? Is it just a matter of a feeling, or is there something more tangible that you would tell people to look for? Give our guys a little bit of guidance, Paige.
Yeah. I think you just got to try a few out. One thing that you mentioned that you do sometimes is like, you got to call people on their bullshit sometimes. I mean, to me, I think and I've had a lot of coaches, I've hired a lot of coaches, I've paid a lot of coaches, I've invested in a lot of coaches. But the first thing I would ask is, what result are you good at helping me get to? Right. So, I could use my tools to help somebody with weight loss. I'm not at all interested in doing that or getting in shape. What I love to do is help people with relationships with others or with themselves. And then, you might ask them, well, what might I expect after we work together for 3, 6, 12 months? And I would say, well, here's what I've worked on with other clients, and here's some of the results that they've had. That I really do think it's kind of for me, it's just, I think, a fit and feel too. I mean, to your point, when I got divorced, I was an attorney. I don't practice anymore, but I'm an attorney by training. And I wanted to hire a good attorney. I hired a man who was actually very well recommended. I was multiple thousands of dollars into this arrangement with this attorney, and the work was bad and his assistant wasn't helpful. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. And so, you know, I can't speak to the men as well as I can for the women, but the one thing that I think is very important is trusting yourself to know this is not for me, or this isn't a good fit for me. Now, if you say none of these people are a good fit for me, that might be something you need to look at internally. But, you know, women especially are taught that, you know, everybody's an expert except ourselves. And, you know, I don't know what kind of messaging men get. But I think all of us in our society, especially with like the rise of social media and again, the books and the podcasts and everything, are like, everybody else is an expert. Like you mentioned Tony Robbins, but he's like not an expert for you. Mm-hmm. And so you could spend years wondering, should I stay? Should I go? Is it bad enough? Is it good enough? Will it get better? Do I stay for the kids? And the only person that can answer those questions is you. And I think something else I just kind of have thought of as we were talking is that I think one thing that holds people back from doing this type of work is just the fear of change. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what's behind door number 2. And we don't know if we're like taking something that's fine for, in some cases, like you mentioned, like, oh, maybe we just outgrow each other. You know, in some cases, it's really not fine. But, you know, some of us just get to a point. I know a lot of, at least for the women that I've coached and that my friends and people I know who are divorced, it's like whatever's behind door number 2 has to be better than this. Or I'm just willing to find out because this is not how I want to keep spending my days and my life. So, I guess to wrap that whole idea up, I would come, men and women, with sort of an idea of something you want to be different, but be super open to the possibility of what you might find out or what you might learn or where it might take you. Because as you do this self-work, you hopefully change and grow and become a person who wants something different than you had before. And that is okay. You don't have to be the same person at 50 that you were at 30.
Right. And you should expect somebody to not tell you what you want to hear either. I mean, I think that goes with anyone who's going to ever help you improve yourself. Is you don't be looking for someone who's just going to, you know, paint like a rosy picture and just say, oh yeah, you know, I say this a lot with people that are searching for divorce attorneys. Like if you go in and someone tells you exactly what you want to hear, they're not the right person for you. You should go find someone who's going to be honest with you and tell you what you need to know and what you need to work on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, you talk about outcome a lot, and this is so important that you have to be clear on what outcome you're looking for. People get so focused on the how. How am I going to get to that outcome? But that's why you're bringing someone who is trained, someone who is a professional into your world, is to help you identify the how, help you figure out how you're going to get there. You have to make the decision. The decision is the hardest part for most people, right? It's the hardest part. You have to decide that you want this outcome, whatever it is, to change, whatever. So yes. How do you reframe people when they come to you, Paige, and they get so focused on, well, how are you going to get me there, Paige? How are you going to do this? Can you give me the PowerPoint presentation that shows exactly
what are the steps that we're going to take? Yes. Yeah. I do want to say one other thing. You always say stuff, and then I'm like, oh, I want to piggyback on that as well. Yeah. Coaches are not your friends, and so we are not here. Like if you have a group of guy friends and you go watch the game and have a few beers and talk about your partners, that or women and the glass of wine with the girlfriends, coaches are not here to be your friend. So to like piggyback on what you said about like, we're going to tell you something maybe you don't want to hear. I'm not going to say, yeah, you're right, she's wrong. The coaching inquiry is really about getting in on your stuff. But what was the question that you just asked me?
Oh, outcomes. Like how do you?
Oh, the outcomes. Yes. Yeah. I have a good example about that I want to share with you. Mm-hmm. Well, again, don't let that be, a prohibitor to like going. If like you don't know what the outcome is, well, I don't know what I want. That's okay too. We can help you with that. But you did say something that's important, which is everybody always starts with, what should I do? What should I do? Should I stay at my job? Should I leave my job? Should I talk to my, person? Should I not talk to my person? Should I buy a new house? Should I not buy a new house? And the coaching can be tremendously helpful because it helps you zoom out and go, what is the thing I'm trying to create here? What's the thing that I want? And in those examples, let's say it was your job. Maybe the thing that you want is a better income. You're growing your family, or you got a new whatever, you want to buy a house. Okay, it's not a question of should I stay at my job or leave my job? It's I'm trying to earn more income. And then how could we do that? Then we brainstorm. Well, you could look for other jobs. You could also look for a promotion or ask for a raise at your current job, and then we just kind of like go through the steps. And it's not another thing that people get stuck on is we do a lot of binaries. Should I stay? Should I go? Should I do this or should I do that? And I'm like, you're missing. You got 47 other options over here that you're not even seeing. Let me say this though, because I know you talk to a lot of folks in the podcast about people that are divorced, but if you're considering divorce, here's what helped me make my decision. And it's exactly about the outcomes and the results. So I got married late, and I married a man with 2 kids, and I was very open to having this, step family, blended family relationship. But it really never meshed. Like, I just felt like there was him and his 2 girls and then me. And then we had our son about a year later. And then I thought, well, now it's those 3, versus us 2. It just never felt like a family of 5. And he's a good man. And I mean, he's really a good man. He's a good person. Like, I like him. We get along now. He's great at his job. He's smart. He cooks. He's creative. He's clever. But I could not continue to live in this like 2 families in one house. Like, I just felt like not even comfortable in my own home. And so we did all these sessions of therapy and therapists and different therapists, round and round and round. And so at one point I just stopped. I just sort of took over. And I was like, I said to him, I said, Matt, I said, tell me your vision for our relationship. Okay. So there we go. Like, what's the result? What's your vision for like where we're going? And this really came from some work that I was doing at that time around outcomes and indicators and results, like in my workday. And so I asked my then husband, what's your vision for our relationship? What's the result that you want? And I've told this story before, but he has a way of sort of talking at you for a long time. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say this went on for 15 or 20 minutes. And the theme was, I work, I do a good job at work, I come home, I take care of the kids, I'm a good dad, and then I work, and then I come home and I take care of the kids. And like, even the therapist was like, oh dear. He did not say Paige, wife, marriage, spouse, like literally didn't say those words. And I was like, okay, let me just, one more time, just to clarify, let me ask this one more time. I know all that, but like me and you, like, what's your vision for our relationship? And I always say, I would have said then what I would say today or in my future, which is I just want to have a partner that's like my best bud, who I love to hang out with, and we have fun and we're good friends. And, we have that intimacy and then everything else. That's what I would have said. And he did it again. And he talked about being a dad and working and being a parent and taking, and I was like, okay. And that was so, it was like, I think my shoulders just probably sat back and I was like, okay, like we're not going to the same place at all. We're just not on the same path in this marriage. And as sucky as that kind of is to hear, it was like super, like, I just was like, I just can't keep doing this. Like, I don't have the constitution to kind of do what my grandma or great grandma or great great grandma like had to do because they didn't have any other choices, And so, again, just kind of it all, I feel like we're just kind of coming back on theme, but coaching and therapy just really can help you ask new questions, ask different questions to your old problems, because we just give you like, then you just have like a different way of looking at it. I just, you know, and again, it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. But then, you know, one of the things that I love and I sort of promote or preach about as a coach a lot is like the gift of neutrality. And a lot of times we categorize something as good or bad, right or wrong, good or bad, hurtful, harmful. And if you can, and again, sometimes it's why I like to say it's simple, but it's not easy. But if you can take your ex or take your job or take your neighbor or whatever the thing is and sort of neutralize it, you just come from such a cleaner place in deciding like how you want to respond to it or how you want to interact with it. And that was my like thing with this, you know, conversation with my ex. Like, I just can't keep doing this, you know? And that's another thing that I share a lot in coaching is people are often afraid to ask the hard, quote unquote, questions that need to be asked. And we hide and we don't talk and we don't get the answers we want. And I'm like, again, if you ask a question, what do you want in this relationship? How often do you want to be intimate? What do you think about our financial future? Then you just get data. Okay. And then data is something that you could do something with. You can decide the Venn diagram is like so far apart, it's like never coming together. Or you can go like, oh no, the circles are overlapping. I think if we, you know, work on it a little bit, we can, you know, find that middle spot. But I love it. I love data. Like if you're out a man, you know, and you're starting to date or, you know, women, again, I come from a sort of a female coaching perspective a lot of the times. And, you know, women are, oh, I don't know. And when should we have sex? And when should we spend the night? And I'm like, just ask, like, have a conversation. We're adults. Like this is the benefit of being a grown-up is you just get to ask. Like we don't have to be 15 anymore and hide and wonder, does he like me? Does he not like me? Like if I'm 6-8 weeks in with somebody and getting to know him, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this thing that we're doing? Just like ask, because then I have information and I can decide, does that align with me and where I'm at and what I want and where my results are that I'm going for? And if somebody says, I just want to have a friend with benefit, I want to keep it casual, and what my result is, back to your question, that I want is a long-term committed relationship, then that's a good time to decide this might not be the person to do that with, rather than keeping yourself stuck in a, you know, 2-year-long situationship and then wondering like, why didn't it go anywhere?
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a good segue into Paige telling our listeners if they would like more information about working with you, how would they go about contacting you?
You can find me on the internet at paigedempseycoaching.com. You can email me. You can contact me on all the socials. And I am just here to help people feel better, do better, be better. I always start with a free like relationship breakthrough call or transformation call, so you can sort of see what it's like to, you know, what it might be like to work with me and what we could work on together. So thank you.
You're welcome. And all of that information she just provided will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today, Paige.
Thank you so much. I think this is such important work that you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on this show.
You're very welcome.